Yes, hello. My name is Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world, happenings in international news, in politics, technology, the environment, everything that goes on, and we take a step back and take a look at these things from a higher perspective. We reflect. We take perhaps a philosophical approach in a way. My approach, I've always been open about, is metaphysical in its basis. Basically, to take a look at things in the outer and change our perspective on it, to realize that what is in the outer isn't coming from the outer, it's coming from the inner, and how we view it, how we respond to it, is what really creates our world. You know, modern physics, quantum physics, has discovered and continues to support the understanding that in observation of these subatomic particles that are the basis of quantum physics, the observer is actually affecting what is observed. In other words, these quantum particles respond to thoughts directed at them. So, as we discover more about this, as science discovers more about this, science begins to come around to the understanding that mystics have had for centuries, that we are creating our own world. We are creating our own reality, if you will. So it's important, I think, to be able to take that step back, to put things in perspective, to understand that these things that might upset us, perhaps if you've been listening to the news lately, you've heard a few things that might have been upsetting. These things are not the truth of who and what we are. These things are illusions that we've created, and we've created them as part of this sort of, I call it sort of a holographic game that is the human experience, where we go through these amazing experiences that feel real, I mean deeply real, and seem to cause us either pain or joy or thousands of different other reactions. But they're all part of the same energy, and they are all part of what we create on the highest level of our being. So I put this together, this sort of approach to dealing with things like difficult news stories, difficult information, and I put it as a wellness tool, because I believe it is a wellness tool. One of the things that people talk about quite a bit these days is the overwhelming amount of information, and a lot of it negative, that they're exposed to, and it does affect you. It affects your energy. It affects your sense of well-being. So knowing how to take that step back, knowing how to go into something that appears problematic, take energy from it, and to recognize the truth of it, that it is a very well-crafted, highly intricate illusion that you created. It's enormously empowering. So I consider that to be a wellness tool. So we're coming up on the actually the 6th anniversary of this show. In November, it will be 6 years, and we've had lots of changes in the show and the format, and lots of interesting feedback as well over the years, and some segments of the show that have come and gone or changed. So I'm bringing back actually two of them, beginning with this show. And the first is one that goes back about 4 years. We did a segment called Pioneers of Consciousness. These are sort of unsung heroes. Many of them scientists, some of them researchers, some of them astronauts, and and writers who have explored areas of consciousness and given great insight into what consciousness actually is. And so I wanted to bring that back, that segment back, because I've recently come across new information and new pioneers, if you will, that are doing consciousness experiments. And this has come out of the series I just recently have been doing on the rise or reemergence of studies using psychedelic chemicals to help people not only medically but also to find a spiritual sense of well-being. So this work has brought a whole new slew of consciousness pioneers to the fore, and so I want to talk about them. And I'm finding out about them as I'm telling you about them. So as I research them, I will certainly pass on more information, but I think that they're important people to acknowledge and discuss, and their findings are fascinating, just fascinating. So we'll bring that back, and we'll also bring back the segment that I started earlier in the year, where we will give a few minutes for a guided meditation to help you, or those of you who are trying to create a meditation practice in your life. This may give you a little bit of space. This may give you a little bit of time to begin building that practice. And since we're into autumn now, this is going to be our official autumn wellness edition. So we'll be talking about tips to keep you well, some new information about food addiction, how foods can be addictive, or can they be? We're going to talk about, there's actually quite a debate over cheese. There's been several articles coming out claiming that cheese is as addictive as crack or cocaine, and there is some pushback against that idea. But anybody who likes cheese knows that it certainly does feel quite a bit like an addiction, and we'll explore why that is too. We might need a couple of segments, a couple of episodes to cover everything we're going to cover today, but we'll continue on with them if need be. So we're going to start with the worries, I guess is the best word, that many have as we listen to the machinations of our political leaders and what seems to be a very divisive world that we are living here in the United States, but not just in the United States. There are divisions around the world that are or appear to be deepening. Much of it in reaction to some of the progress that the world has made. There are always those forces or those energies that pull back in fear. And it can create a sense of unease, of dis-ease, if you will. So getting to oneness can sometimes feel impossible. But remember how I talked about all of these things being illusions? That these illusions we are creating ourselves to create the feeling of being separate, of being not unified. Because that is not the truth of who we and what we are. And so in creating these scenarios, we are able to do certain things. We are able to address concerns that we feel are important. We are able to connect to what we find to be authentic. And ultimately, and this is most effectively done when we go into that which bothers us the most, that which we disagree with the most, and we go into that and into the understanding of our part in creating it. That is truly empowering. So these are all things that we can use as meditative tools to help us expand, to help us grow and become more aware of the truth of who we are. Taking things like that into meditation is enormously empowering, and it's a healthy thing to do for yourself, not only psychologically but physically. Of course, I'm a big advocate of meditation, and this show often talks about it. Last week we talked about meditation and how it helps you focus your awareness, but also helps you to do some very healthful physical things like lowering your blood pressure and decreasing your heart rate. If you have a racing heart, and your respiratory rate, increasing blood flow. Because when you can increase the blood flow, that helps with things like everything from skin problems to hair loss, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Meditation can help in enhancing the immune function. It can help you fight off illness better, boost your immune system. Now, how does it do that, you say? Well, we had a couple of shows